everybody. Welcome to Potluck. I'm K. Patrick Glover, your host. I have with me today Mr. Dave Dennison, all the way from Thailand, and we'll start chatting with him in just a moment. As you can see, we are still shooting from my basement. The current situation still has us on lockdown at the studio. We will be back there soon, I hope. But in the meantime, we're going to keep bringing shows from here. Dave, welcome to Potluck.
Glad to be here.
It's been a long time since we talked. The last time I saw you, you were in Michigan working for Senator Levin.
That's correct.
In Thailand.
I am.
How you got there? Talk us through the journey a little bit.
So, when I left Senator Levin's office after he retired, I made a brief return to the career I had been engaged in before that, which was acting. I was a stage actor, primarily doing musical theater. But around the same time, I was also getting ready to get married and getting ready to adopt my now stepdaughter. And it became very, very clear very, very quickly that it was not going to be possible for me to be an actor and be a good family man. And I chose the latter. So I began looking at possible career fields to go into. I kind of had my fill of politics, and I had always been kind of interested in getting into education. And what took me to Thailand was very, very fluky. I knew that I wanted to be abroad again. I had studied, I did my undergrad and graduate school all in the United Kingdom, and it had never really been my intention to move back to the United States. So I started looking at these international job forums where people post international teaching jobs. And international teaching jobs tend to be better paid. You tend to have a little bit more flexibility in the classroom. There's less red tape. So teachers tend to prefer it. At least that has been my experience. And I signed up for something, it's called TIE Online, is the name of the website. It functions sort of like a monster.com, but for international teaching. And I put my resume up there, and the very next day, I got an email from the school where I now work. So it all went very quickly after that. It turned out that my timing was fortuitous in that the school had just lost a drama teacher, and they needed to hire a new one, and it was late in the hiring season, and there I was ready to do it. And so my wife and I both interviewed and both had jobs within about a month. And then about 4 months later, we were living in Thailand.
Wow. Did you have a teaching background before at all?
Yes and no. So I did not formally train as an educator until recently, until this job. But I had done through my work in the performing arts, that had intersected quite a bit with education. So I directed and I choreographed and I worked with big groups of kids, getting them all to tap dance in unison when they had never done that before. So you and I know each other from northern Michigan. I belong to an organization up there called the Congregational Summer Assembly. And I had done a lot of sort of sports and athletics education type work, tennis teacher, swim teacher, that kind of thing. So I had probably about as much of a background in education as you can have without having a background in education.
Okay.
But I did have to get certified as a teacher once I was hired.
Okay. Are there any sort of, for viewers who might be interested in this sort of travel, is there any sort of hoops you have to jump through as far as, other than a passport that you need to go overseas and start working and staying there on a?
It really depends on the country. So of course you need to have your American passport lined up. But after that, it is entirely down to what country you're going to and what their immigration laws are and what their employment laws are. So typically speaking, if any of your viewers are interested in pursuing this kind of a career field, then I would highly recommend it. It's been immensely fun for my whole family. You probably need to have some combination of a bachelor's degree or a teacher's certificate or experience as a teacher. You don't necessarily have to have all three. Oftentimes, it's only one of the three that you need. So in my case, I had a degree, but I And I had a little bit, like I said, of education, of experience as a teacher, but I didn't have anything that like a principal would look at and say, oh, this guy's clearly experienced. So for me, it was just the degree that I had, and then I had to go get a teaching certificate, which I did through the state of Massachusetts, actually. But some countries are stricter about that, and they're going to want to see more experience before they dish out a work permit to somebody looking to work as an educator in their country, even in an international school.
Thailand. Have you been to that part of the world before?
No, I had not set foot in Thailand, or for that matter, anywhere in Southeast Asia. And until I got the email from the school where I now work, I had never heard of the city of Chiang Mai, which is where I now live. Now, it turned out that a lot of other people had heard of it. So once we started announcing that we were making the move, we were getting emails and calls from people that both my wife Sarah and I knew, saying, oh my goodness, you're going to Chiang Mai, that's so wonderful, I went there on vacation. And indeed, it is a phenomenally fun city. But no, we never even heard of it and had absolutely no background in Asia at all.
So communication-wise, I'm assuming you're teaching in English?
We are. So our school, 100% of the instruction is in English, with, of course, the exception of foreign language classes. The city itself is relatively easy to get around with my very, very rudimentary Thai. And I mean very rudimentary. I've got pre-K, no, I don't even have a pre-K level vocabulary. I can order food and ask if certain things are in a shop and how much things cost, but that's about it.
Yeah, when my wife and I went to Norway last year, the one thing that I learned how to say, or made sure I knew how to say, was can I please have a beer?
Right.
I'm assuming you can order beer there.
I can order beer. That was a priority.
How are the people there treating you? Are Americans welcome?
Yeah, so I have had really nothing but good experiences in terms of how I've been treated here. Thailand has a complicated relationship with foreigners, as I think does any country or anywhere that has a tourist-dependent economy in the way that Thailand does. So a little bit similar to Northern Michigan, how do the townies feel about lakies? That's a little bit how Thai people feel about farangs, which is the word they have for foreigners. Generally speaking, Thai culture is extremely warm and extremely welcoming. There are, unfortunately, some visitors to Thailand who give other visitors a very bad name. So for all of the, you think vacation in Thailand and you probably think beaches and bikinis and partying and full moon parties and craziness. Thai culture is actually much more conservative than that, and it's much more reserved. So, my wife and I kind of always cringe when we're out in the city and we see foreigners, walking around with their shirts off, screaming and carrying on in the street, because it's just not, it's an impolite thing to do here.
Right. I don't want to touch too heavily on the politics, but you went over there during a very different political time in our country. You went over under the Obama administration.
No, it was actually right at the beginning of the Trump administration.
Was it? Oh, okay.
It was, yep.
Okay, so then you wouldn't have seen has there been a lot of change in the way Americans viewed during the last few years?
It's tough to say. From the Thai perspective, I think the best way I can answer that is that unless a Thai person really wants to get to know you, they're not necessarily going to differentiate between an American and a Canadian and a Brit. Certainly, I've never experienced any sort of judgment upon me based on my nationality as an American. To the extent that you might be kind of viewed with some side eye, it's going to be because you're obviously a foreigner and maybe the person dealing with you has had some bad experience with foreigners. But I've never experienced any, specifically anti-American sentiment, if that makes sense. And really, I haven't experienced any anti-foreigner sentiment. I just know that some people have. and that it is an experience that some have had in Thailand.
Are you and your wife on the same page? Is she enjoying life there as much as you are?
I think very much so. Yeah. And we have 2 kids. We have a daughter who's 10, and she is now a 4th grader at our school, and she loves it. And we have a newborn who's about 3.5 months old. So, and it's been, that part of it being in Thailand has been terrific too. It's a wonderful place to raise kids. It's our experience of, my son Linus was born about 2 weeks before everything shut down due to COVID-19. But the experience of being in the hospital here and going through that was terrific. Healthcare here is wonderful. I can't say enough good things about that. Actually, that's not true. I will say one more thing about that. The very first week that we were here, our daughter swallowed some pool water. And so she got kind of a tummy bug. And it was our first week in Southeast Asia. We didn't know, does she have something serious or is this just a tummy bug? So we didn't want to take any chances, and we took her to the hospital. And we were in and out in about 45 minutes. There were never fewer than 3 people tending to her. They gave her shots to the point where she was better when we got back to the hotel. And all in all, it cost us about $70.
Wow.
So, yeah, and this was before our insurance kicked in. So we paid out of pocket for that. That wasn't a copay. That was just what it cost for healthcare. And my wife couldn't believe it. She was in tears when we got back to the hotel because it was unbelievable to her that you could have healthcare that was that good and that competent and not have to be paying for it for the next 5 years of your life. So
that's amazing. You mentioned the elephant in the room, so let's go ahead and start talking about that a little bit.
Sure.
What was it like when the outbreak first started over there?
So Thailand was, and I think this is true, you may have to fact check me and issue a correction, but I believe Thailand was actually the 2nd country to have a confirmed case of COVID-19. So there's a huge amount of transfer between Thailand and China.
Okay.
So, and Chinese tourists are a huge presence in Chiang Mai and throughout Thailand. So we have been dealing with COVID-19 about as long as anyone outside of China has been dealing with it. And really, like everywhere else, we initially kind of didn't know what to make of it. Sort of, okay, so it's like a bad flu, we think. And when it became clear that that wasn't true and that it was much more serious than that, the government took very quick and very decisive action, I would say, to shut down huge parts of the country. So we did that earlier than the United States did. And so, for example, from my perspective as a teacher, the Thai schools are on a slightly different calendar. So they had already, I think this is true, had already been released for the summer. But we had another, 2 months or so of planned instruction when we were shut down. And so we all had to move to distance learning. They closed all the restaurants except for takeout. They closed all the bars. They closed all public venue. They shut the borders. They stopped traffic, sort of interprovincial traffic, except on a very limited basis. And I'm probably missing a few of the guidelines that were in place. They were very quick. For example, not all of this was top down. A lot of this was businesses taking their own initiative. But it became and still is commonplace to have your temperature checked before you enter any store. I had a dentist appointment today, and I was basically draped in I don't even know what you would call it, like almost a pall, and with just a little hole for my mouth. And the dentists and dental hygienists were practically in hazmat gear on me. So they took it very, very seriously, very, very early on. And it appears to have paid off.
Taking it seriously.
They're still taking it hugely seriously. So Thailand has just now begun a phased reopening of their economy. So, for example, restaurants are open now, but with strict social distancing enforced. Stores still have temperature checkpoints and sign-ins. There's an app which has had limited success. Not everyone is using it. But the idea being that should there be another outbreak, contact tracing will already be in place. That was what the Thai government focused very, very heavily on. Rather than fully shutting down initially, they invested a lot of energy and resources in contact tracing. And they did an excellent job of it. So there were a couple, what they termed super spreader events. One was at a boxing arena in Bangkok, and they were tracing cases back to that for weeks after. So they were really on the ball, and I feel a little bit bad for the Thai government because I feel like they're sort of unsung heroes in all of this, because Thailand has not had a reported case due to community spread in over 2 weeks now. We have only had, I believe it's 56 deaths, and the number of total cases stands at something like a little bit north of 3,000. And all of that obviously there was tremendous economic pain suffered, but you don't hear a lot of Thai people complaining about it. And really, there was, I think, a tremendous degree of compliance here with the regulations that were put in place.
That was going to be my next question, was there any pushback there over any of these regulations?
Oh, Kevin, it looks like you froze on me.
I've got you back.
Okay, yep. Sorry, I didn't catch your last question.
Okay. I was going to ask about if there had been any pushback there, but you were just talking about that briefly.
No, really, no. And not that I saw. I mean, of course, there was a lot of economic frustration. As I mentioned earlier, Thailand is an economy that is heavily dependent on tourism. And that part of the economy has effectively been shut off. So even now, anyone wishing to travel to Thailand for the foreseeable future from abroad is going to be forced into 2 weeks of state-mandated quarantine. So that effectively ruins anyone's vacation plans, right? Because nobody from the United States is going to go on vacation to a country where they have to spend the 2 weeks of their holiday in a state facility. So it has been incredibly painful. The airlines have taken a huge hit. One, I believe, filed for bankruptcy. But people in Thailand were, I think, sufficiently and appropriately concerned with the threat posed by COVID-19 that they didn't really have to be told in strong terms to take it seriously. They were already doing it. It's also, Chiang Mai also unfortunately has what we call the smoky season, where in the jungles surrounding us, there's a lot of agricultural burning that takes place, and we have a huge problem with forest fires. What that means is that for about 2 months out of every year, the air quality in Chiang Mai is some of the worst in the world.
Right.
And growing up in the United States, I was very fortunate to never have to have lived in a place that had really poor air quality, but it is tremendously unpleasant. The one sort of happy accident with that is that Thai people, particularly in the north of Thailand, were already very used to wearing masks. So it didn't take anything to get compliance on that, and it now, I think, is being borne out that wearing a mask is a hugely effective way to combat the spread of this illness.
Right. So in America and in the UK and in several other countries, COVID has become very much a political issue, and the response is divided among almost among party lines, like so many other issues, unfortunately. Is there nothing? Is there no political divide there as far as something like this?
Nothing whatsoever that I have observed. Now, Thai politics functions very, very differently to American politics in lots of ways. Thailand is ruled by a military junta that took power in a coup several years ago. It was a bloodless coup, so there was no violence. But the management style of the government is much more top-down than it is in the United States. So they have the tools to enforce compliance, even if people had been obstinate about it. But people really weren't. And no, we don't. I think it's been frustrating and a bit horrifying for Thai people to watch what's happened in the United States, to see what is not remotely a political issue become not just politicized, but polarized.
Do you have full access to American and European news there?
We do. Yep. There is some light censorship of media in Thailand, but it's nothing like what you would experience in China. So no, we have more or less complete access. We actually get CNN as part of our TV package.
Okay. The other big issue here in the States and in many countries abroad right now has stemmed from the death of an African-American man named George Floyd
Yes.
at the hands of a police officer, and the protests that have followed thereafter. Has that had any effect in Thailand?
It has. I would certainly not in the way that it has in the United States. But there was a Black Lives Matter protest in Bangkok. There was recently one in Chiang Mai. I think that solidarity would be the word I would use to describe what's coming out of Thailand on this. So it obviously police relations is a complicated and kind of a sticky issue in Thailand too, but not remotely the way it is in the United States. So certainly Thai people are plugged into social media and watched, as I did, and I'm sure you did with horror, the video of George Floyd being murdered. But I don't know, the view from without when you're looking at something like that happening in the United States is very, very interesting. And it's something that I think if Americans watched on television happening in a different country, they would immediately recognize how horrifying it was. But because it's internal, it falls into this spectral divide of right and left and for or against, and it's been really unfortunate to watch that unfold.
Okay, so we're getting towards the end here. Let me ask you a couple of quick questions going backwards in our interview.
Sure.
That some folks watching this are interested in vacationing in Thailand or in moving abroad. What would their first steps be? Where should they start looking? Any particular websites or resources that would be good for that?
Sure. So if what you want to do, it depends a little bit on your age and what you're wanting to do. So a lot of Southeast Asian countries, if you're over the age of about 50, offer retirement visas, where if you pony up a little bit of cash, you don't need a job, you don't need a work permit, you don't need to be married to somebody from that country. You can simply apply and you can go. Now, this used to be very, very easy in Thailand. They're cracking down a little bit on it, so it isn't quite as easy as it was. I believe it is still very easy in Vietnam. If you're younger and what you want to do is go abroad to work, I can really only speak to education in this regard, but there are a couple ways of doing it. If you have a teaching certificate, I would encourage you to check out organizations like TIE Online or Search Associates, or there are several more that I can't remember right now.
Okay.
But there are any number of job forums that advertise and post international educator jobs. And in that regard, you're going to do a round of Skype interviews, and if they like you, you're going to get hired. Teachers from the West are very heavily in demand in the East because there is such a high premium placed on learning English. So it's a good job market. It's a competitive job market. You have to be able to get through an interview, but you're likely to find gainful employment, and you're likely to be surprised, I think, at how good some of these jobs are. If you're not a certified teacher and you still want to go abroad and get some experience in education, you, for not very much time and not very much money, can get a TEFL certification, which is Teacher of English as a Foreign Language. And a lot of countries, Thailand being one of them, have a robust market for just English language schools. These jobs won't pay quite as much, but they are available and tend to have a slightly lower bar in terms of if education wasn't your first career, if you're going to it from something else and you're trying to build your experience more, these are likely to be more accessible jobs for you. That's how you would do it if you were looking to work. Now, if you were just looking to travel to Thailand, I hope it opens up again soon and you can do it, because it's an absolutely wonderful country with so much to see and so much to do, and so much fun to be had, whether you're a single guy looking to party or whether you're a family man like me and you want to take your kids to do something fun. You will find something to do. And then once you're in Southeast Asia, travel around Southeast Asia is very, very easy and very, very affordable. One of the things I categorically do not miss about the United States is the absence of low-cost airlines. And we have them in Southeast Asia, and they have them in Europe too. And it's just a wonderful thing because you can hop on a plane for about what it would cost you to hop on a bus back in the States. And so you can really see the world in a fantastic way.
What's the general cost of living like over there?
Unbelievably low.
Okay.
Absolutely unbelievably low, particularly in Chiang Mai. I actually think I read something online that was something like, you know, the top 10 cities to retire to if you're on a fixed income, and Chiang Mai was on the list. So we've been here for 3 years now, and every day there's something that I or my wife notices that costs a fraction of what it would cost in the United States or in Western Europe. It's just unbelievable. So that's the interesting thing. I mean, Thailand is certainly not without its social problems. There is a tremendous amount of poverty here, but comparatively, there is very little food insecurity here because food is very, very inexpensive, and healthcare is very inexpensive. And if you can't afford healthcare, you can apply for relief, and you get it basically for free. So a lot of the structural costs that make life in the United States so economically insecure for so many just don't apply here. And what I often tell people is that I feel like I sort of realized the American dream. I just had to leave America to do it. Which I hope that doesn't offend any of your viewers, but it's the reality.
And it's a great way to end the show. Thank you, Dave, for coming on. And
thank you so much
for watching. You can catch previous episodes of Potluck at www.potluck-online.org. I have been K. Patrick Glover, and have a nice night.